Hello everyone, welcome to the ScholarDev Show. And today we having a guest, Mr. Aditya Oberai. He is a Microsoft MVP and the developer advocate at Upright. So let's welcome to the Aditya.
Thank you so much, Shalendra. Really happy to be here. And hi, everyone. Hope you're all doing well.
Yeah, hi. So Aditya, do let us know about your career journey, how you started.
Sure. So I will say I am a recent graduate. I graduated last year from Amity University as a computer science and engineering student. That's the degree I pursued. And over the last 4 years, I have actively spent time around tech communities, around hackathons, working on a lot of different projects of my own, working and contributing to some open source projects as well. I was a Microsoft Imagine Cup national winner as well in the past as a part of this journey. And lately, I've been working at the developer relations team at Upright, where I help support our open source community, collaborate with them, work with different builders, working with Upright as well. So that does allow me to work with different parts of tech, with some content, and with our community. That's probably very briefly what I've been doing lately. But I've spent the last 4 years learning and working with different technologies. .NET has been a personal favorite through all of that, especially for the backend, especially around cross-platform applications. Those are the two paradigms where I've worked with .NET the most. And so in that process, I've tried to explore how .NET and the cloud can work together. And that's definitely helped me across various parts of my journey, whether it's through hackathons, whether it's as an intern, and it has definitely led to a very recent Microsoft MVP award as well.
Okay. So just start with your, the past. Just let us know about your family background, a little bit, how you started your journey so that the scholar having a more idea about it. Main idea behind it, let's say, we are willing to explore how your interest started with the Microsoft.NET. Yeah, please.
Oh, okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, for me, I grew an interest around computers and around tech at a very early age. Because I was still fortunate where I had access to computers at home, even as a little kid. Where I remember I was just 3 or 4 years old probably, but we had this Windows 98 based PC that ran the old Pentium 4 chips, and I still remember playing pinball on those, and I think that's probably where I started getting closer and closer to computers themselves. And gradually as I went through school, I'd always try to participate in any computer science classes. So I still remember class 5th, we used to play around with command prompt, or at that point we still had MS-DOS systems, and we tried some amount of MS logo to make little vector drawings. And gradually throughout school, computers is something I kept learning and exploring about. So even as I took up the subject, in my class 9th, class 10th, 11th, 12th, I did get some amount of experience working with code because I was in the ICSE and the ISC board, and we had Java around then. Fortunate for me, I think back home, I got a lot of encouragement to study and pursue computer science because I did have so my uncle, he's a computer science graduate as well. He did his engineering at Manipal back early on in the 90s, and so computers was always something that was encouraged and accepted around home because mom and dad are also both science and engineering students. So I think through all of this, because I was always so interested, I decided to pursue computer science engineering in college, where I was just like, I'm going to study this. But okay, I know, because for a lot of students who are entering college, right, you often end up having a choice of whether you want to take your preferred course or preferred college. And so I always had the mindset that I needed to study what I wanted to study. And so that's what I went forward with. I started and
So you started with Java, right?
Back in school,
and
yes.
you having a background of the people around you, they are already working in the computer science.
Always supported. So my uncle, he studied, and right now he works as a distributor with Dell. So he's been around computers, and that's how I actually got to play around with some hardware as a child as well, because they since they're a distributor, they also help with some IT and repair work. So I always had access to computer hardware, and I think it's just as an interest, it really grew as a kid, and that helped me a lot because I always had that sort of natural inquisitiveness and interest around computers as a child could, about whether they're games or whether they're toys. It was a very natural interest that developed for me around computers. So yeah, that having that sort of an environment helped out a lot. And then, as I entered college, I started getting involved with more activities outside of class as well. One of
Okay.
the activities or one of the programs I got involved with immediately after my first year was Microsoft's student program, which was then called Microsoft Student Partners, is now called the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors. That's actually a program that I believe has been running for a lot of years, and then got slightly revamped around 2016 or 17, and it became a global program. So I remember when I joined there, I think one of the first steps that someone as a member of the program had to accomplish was complete a learning path on Microsoft Learn. The one that
So
I
you are
accidentally,
so you are addressing here from the beginning of the first year of your college.
yes,
You start
just
participating in the program what are offered by the various other
exactly,
things. So this is a
exactly.
learning from the people who actually started their career in the BTech, CS, and the IT. So don't think we will participate in the third year and the fourth year. Start looking at what your seniors
As
are
soon as
doing and
possible.
start doing the things so that you will have the more understanding about the industry, what the expectation of the industry we have, and what can be the path. Until you will not interact with the seniors, until you will not interact with the people who are already in the corporate, you are not going to understand where you can go ahead, what is your interest. Okay, so this is the learning for
Exactly.
the audience. Yeah, please.
I think the best thing about these programs actually is they do not look at what course you're studying. They only care about how interested you are and how willing you are to contribute and work, right? So the good thing is these programs are really open to anyone in college or pursuing a higher education degree. And so, when I got involved in that, first step was to complete a Microsoft Learn path. I think I
Okay.
accidentally, and this was probably the best accident that could have happened, I accidentally happened to try out the one around Windows application development, where I had to work and build a universal Windows platform application. And that's where I got exposed to C# for the first time. And C#, as some of us, if not all, know, is one of the languages that comes within the .NET platform. It is an object-oriented language by default, but as it's grown, it's really evolved into a very general purpose programming language. And I think I just really enjoyed working with C# at the beginning. A big part of that was also because I had a background in Java, and in the past, Java and C# have been very familiar syntactically. That helped me transition towards C# very comfortably. So
So
I
there
think
is
for
a
me,
one question I'm asking. There is a
yes,
one
absolutely.
question. Usually what happens here in the BTech and in the BE, we don't have the .NET and the C# in the syllabus. Usually people having the Java and the C++.
That's true.
So what are the experience you want to share with the scholars if somebody willing to make a career in the .NET field? So of course in the college they are not learning the C#, they are learning the Java. So how easy it is if you are willing to learn the C#?
That's a great question. Personally, if I purely talk about C#, I think over the years, as the .NET Foundation team and Microsoft have worked on it, they have tried to improve the developer experience of C# to a point where it is just very easy to get started with. And that's been a constant effort. But aside from that, yes, of course, it does become a concern. Like I remember in college as well, first year we had C, which we were studying with, and second year we started with C++ and Java, and then we had advanced Java courses, and then there was a Python MOOC as well, and C# wasn't a part of the curriculum. But when we go out and when we build, a lot of the fundamentals of how we build, right? These concepts could include object-oriented programming, or we talk about databases, or we talk about design patterns or data structures. The truth is these stay consistent across languages, right? These fundamentals will remain consistent. So if you have a good grasp of these concepts, it's only a syntax difference at the beginning. So if you have experience with Java or C++ transitioning to C Sharp, should be comfortable as long as you have an understanding of fundamentals of this sort, like object-oriented programming, like classes, all of these concepts.
So you are highlighting here to learn any programming language. If you will see, fundamentally the things are same. If you're looking at any programming language, we having the data type, variables, conditional statements, loops.
Exactly.
We having the object-oriented concept. So these are the same. It does not matter whether you're learning Java.
These fundamentals remain. Right
These are
now,
the
if I
same.
go to a language of an entirely different paradigm, like for example, if I suddenly move to Haskell for functional programming, maybe yes, then there is a very fundamental difference in how the language works. But for any general programming language or a language that is made keeping in mind to support object-oriented programming, like Java, for example, or C++, which are taught in college. These two become, I believe, mandatory courses for most, at least one of these. So as long as these fundamentals are remembered and retained, you're taking the same concepts like variables, arrays, the way you've got Java's collections framework, you're still going to have lists and stacks and queues in C Sharp as well, right? Maybe the way of writing might be slightly different, but the concepts are the same. And the best part is when we're building in the real world, it's not like we can't access documentation when we need to. So it's all right as we build to continuously refer and learn and build alongside. But these are just syntactical differences and they are covered over time. Right, because like if I talk about examples from my own journey, my internship used .NET. We were working with .NET 5 and .NET Core 3.1 on a few different fronts with ASP.NET Web APIs and with Azure Functions as well. At AppWrite, when I look at our stack, we've actually got a PHP-based stack where we've built our own framework. We're using a Dockerized stack here. But when I look at how the product is structured, and it's open source, so people can look at it, a lot of the same concepts of how we were structuring controllers and views, they're still retained, right? We're still leveraging standard, well-proven, battle-tested design patterns. We're still using data structures that we know will function in certain scenarios. So when we talk about implementing logic, what programming languages effectively are tools to do that, right? A lot of these fundamental practices are things we still retain. Maybe just the way I would manipulate a string would vary, right? But the fact that I'm still implementing the same functionalities means that it's another tool to implement logic. And these tools and the syntaxes can be learned as long as your fundamentals are good with one of those languages.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is, so I think you work with the UWP, am I right?
I have tried UWP in the past, yes. And I think more than that, I've worked relatively more with Xamarin. That's actually something I used for multiple hackathons as well as my own projects. So I ended up doing more work with Xamarin, but I have tried UWP in the past for sure.
So what is the suggestion you want to share with the, the scholars who are willing to participate in the hackathons? What type of preparation they should do? And is there any prerequisite to participate in the hackathons?
The only prerequisite I really recommend keep having is just an ability and just having a mindset where you're constantly willing to learn, right? If you're faced with difficulty, the persistence to work through that and the persistence to go back and learn and go back and learn and work, that's really what is needed. Because when we talk about hackathons, right, they are essentially development marathons that we're having over these periods of time, whether that's 48 hours or a month long. The idea is that we're trying to come up with our own ideas, creatively solve problems that may not have solutions around right now. Maybe some problems have, but not in the best manner possible. So when we're trying to work on our own ideas, it will maybe challenge some amount of our knowledge or our limits of creativity. So the important thing is that you should be willing to learn throughout that, because there will always be times where you're faced with some trouble, where you get stuck in the middle, right? Where maybe it's a problem that you haven't come across in the past. But the best thing is that because you're trying to solve something that hasn't been done, maybe your work can actually have an impact outside of it. Because these are places where you're actually building for yourself. So as long as you're continuously willing to learn and work through these problems, you should be able to you should be fine. And like for me, for example, I did a lot of work with Xamarin and so on. So I know when I was building, really working with non-relational databases, or when we talk about working with APIs, understanding why serverless functions are important. All of these things were first time experiences for me at different hackathons, because I tried to understand the problems we wanted to solve, work with some of the mentors, understand why which tech fit in on different contexts, right?
Oh.
Because there are places where Cosmos DB might be a better solution than SQL Server, or vice versa. Or, sometimes all you need is a serverless function rather than a full-fledged monolithic API. So it's about understanding where different technology fits different needs. And as long as you're willing to learn and make mistakes and keep making mistakes and learning from them, hackathons will allow you to build a good amount of proof of work and gain experience outside of your class at different times throughout the year as well. Because maybe when it comes to internships, you've got your summer and winter vacations. Some people have longer vacations at only one point. Like for me, I had a longer summer vacations, about 2 months. I had a 1 week long winter vacation. Because I was participating in hackathons, I could still continue working on projects, collaborating with other people, and building throughout the rest of the year. So I was not limited to just my intern period. It's all about being willing to make mistakes and learn from them, and continuously keep asking questions and learning and learning and learning.
So you are saying here you should be a better problem solver and make sure you have tried so many things. And of course, you can be the better problem solver if you know the fundamental of a particular technology well. Then these things really will help you to participate in the hackathon and those things, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just being willing to go through and experience failure as well. Because the truth is that we are still learning, right? As students, you are at a very, very, very early phase in your career. So it's all right to make mistakes as long as you're willing to learn from them. And the willingness to learn is the most important, because you're not going to be perfect on the first day, right? Like if we were all perfect, it wouldn't have taken so long to build out the products that we love and that we use on a daily basis, whether they are services we use like Azure, or whether they are general tools like Twitter or YouTube or Zoom. They were never built in a day, right? They weren't just quick little projects. Things take time and people make mistakes, and it's okay to do that as long as you can keep learning through those experiences. But learning is the most important thing. That's always necessary.
What was your first job? With which company you joined your first job?
This is my first job.
How were you able to get it? Okay.
This is actually my first job. Although I've done multiple internships in the past, so I could actually take both the experiences of my first job that is now, as well as my first technical software developer internship. So I think if I'll talk about the internship first, because that happened earlier, right? That might make more sense. So my first software developer.
Sorry to interrupt. Let me recap the question. So how are you able to get your first internship, and what are your suggestion to get the first internship if somebody willing to try to get a first internship? So how he can actually, or how she can get it?
Great question there. So my first software developer internship was at a software consultancy called Tech Dome Solutions, which is based out of Indore. And they do work a lot with .NET, with Azure, and so on. So when I was looking for software developer internships, because I'd been working with .NET through hackathons and with projects, I was looking to work with an organization that would help me learn more with .NET. So for me, what I had done is, because I had spent some time working on my own projects through hackathons, I had some amount of proof of work around .NET. And that's one thing I recommend, like for internships, getting some experience working on projects, no matter small or large, is always going to be beneficial, because that's how we build some amount of experience within a certain tech stack. So because I was looking for a more .NET oriented internship, I started reaching out to folks across LinkedIn, across Twitter. One of the people who I had volunteered under in the past, Gaurav Chauhan from Indore, he actually helped me connect with Tech Dome, with one of the members, the then CEO, I believe he's the CEO now. His name is Rahul Joshi. So they connected with me. I had an interview with them where they tried to understand my knowledge around .NET, my experiences, what I had worked on, the projects in the past. We talked about APIs and so on. And based on that, what they did is they shared a couple of assignments with me to help me refresh my knowledge around certain parts of web APIs, around authentication and authorization, around databases and entity framework. And once I gave those tasks, if I had any questions, I shared those with them. And based on that, they involved me onto one of the projects that they were working on at that point of time. Now, that is a good way of going about it. If you're working with startups and so on, like having some amount of experience and understanding with a certain stack. Otherwise, with some much larger companies where I had my peers working, my fellow hackathon teammates working, some of them like a Microsoft or a Google, companies like that, with them, the fundamentals become a little more important, like your knowledge around data structures or some amount of how software design is supposed to happen. Your problem solving methodologies also become very, very important in the process, which is why we have the whole data structures and algorithms, tests, and so on, and interviews. Because these are great ways to understand a person's problem solving capability. Because with startups, the thing is, because they still have a niche, and because they are smaller teams, they need someone with some amount of experience in a stack. The stack takes a lot of importance as well, aside from these. But with a relatively larger company, you would need to focus a lot more on the fundamentals. And as long as you have a great grasp of those tests should be doable. And there are a lot of platforms to practice for those as well, right? Like for data structures and algorithms practice, you can go to LeetCode or HackerRank, and then later on maybe to other platforms like CodeChef and so on. So there are places and platforms to practice, and the great thing is there are so many resources available online to us today that learning can be done very easily from the convenience of our homes, as long as you have a lab and an internet connection.
So you are saying if you are willing to get a internship from a startup or from a service-based company, you should be good in a particular technology. And
like
when it is
if they recruit for a specific technology or a specific role, right? Chances are that they need a certain skill from you already. So having that skill, yes, is going to be important aside from the fundamentals.
Of course. And when it is coming to the product-based company, you should be good in the data set and all the things, because based upon that, they offer you the internship and all the things. So here there is a learning
yes.
to the scholars. Make sure, depending upon which type of company you are targeting, based upon that, you have to be good in the particular technology, in the particular the fundamental whatever we have. So you able to get it. And the most important thing is, if you are active on the LinkedIn, if you are participating in the hackathon and various meetups, so you are the chances to get the internship in short time, because you having the networking, you having the contact, so they definitely will help you. Otherwise, there would be the trouble. So if, especially in the off-campus, the things are difficult.
Like I think for me as well, personally, I still remember because back in second and third year, because I've been active in communities for so long, I had done non-technical internships as well. And there was a time when I was considering whether I should do a software developer internship or not, right? The thing is, the larger the companies these are, if you try and participate, it's going to be that much more competition as well, right? With a Microsoft or a Google or a Goldman Sachs, companies like that, they've got massive participation bases and application bases for their internships, right? But with smaller organizations, having a great network helps a lot. And it also, I think for me personally, I think because I worked with a smaller organization, this was a really small organization, it helped me substantially because I got that much more focus and mentorship and support. And yes, if you have some amount of network on platforms like LinkedIn, getting access to such opportunities becomes a lot easier, because just because you've interacted and you've worked with different people, right? Sometimes opportunities that might not be publicly showcased become open to you. Like when I joined iTech Dome, they weren't advertising this opportunity on LinkedIn, but because I had the network I had interacted and collaborated with someone who was in touch there, they helped me get access to this opportunity. So having networked helps a lot, and tools like LinkedIn should be leveraged well as a student. It has a lot of benefits.
So when you decided to start sharing your knowledge with others through tech speaking?
I have done tech speaking, yes, as well. And I did start that through the Microsoft Student Ambassadors program. That's where I started. Because I think somewhere along the way, when I started sharing, what I realized is, right, that I love the tech I'm working with and I love helping people with it. So being able to speak about the technologies and the projects and that I worked with and educating about them, I felt gave me the best of what I personally wanted to do. And so I started taking steps to share about the technical knowledge that I was learning and gaining. And that's how my journey around tech speaking and helping communities really expanded.
So here the learning to the audience is, if you're willing to recall the things well, if you're willing to participate in the tech speaking, so it's not the case you should be the expert in that particular field. Whatever the things you know, you can start from those things. Even around the cities, around the every corner, you will find out we having the smaller meetups. You can start your speaking career from there, so that you will get the confidence. Because whenever you're going to speak in front of the audience, you should be confident, you should be good in that particular concept, whatever you are going to teach over there. And this definitely will help you to proceed ahead in your career, whatever you are there, right?
It makes a big difference. And I think the best part is because when you go out to speak and educate, you end up revising and learning more and more on your own. So it helps improve your own concepts as well in the process. So it definitely has its benefits. And it's okay if you're not starting off in front of 100, 200, 500 people. You can start off in front of 10, 20, 30 people as well. That's totally all right. But the habit of learning and then sharing alongside will only help you retain and reinforce your own concepts. And that does have benefits, because aside from helping other people learn, you also showcase your own knowledge. So chances are when you're sharing and speaking, someone who might be looking for that sort of knowledge could actually end up reaching out to you as well in that process, right? Because it's not that people don't need good talent around. It's just it's not always easy to find talent. So this actually makes it easier for anyone else who might be looking for that talent to reach out to you as well, because you've showcased what you bring to the table there.
So now where you are finding the .NET based stack, where it is going? Because many fresh are actually having a confusion that Java is still better. I'm sure, and they are going towards the Python, they are going towards the machine learning and the AI. So what is your advice to the people who are willing to come into the .NET field?
I think at the moment, .NET is actually seeing some really good updates. It's once again become a major priority across teams in Microsoft as well as at the .NET Foundation. In fact, a lot of services across Azure are themselves written with .NET, and Microsoft, of course, uses them a lot. But aside from that, when we talk about using different languages and tools, right? Earlier on, I mentioned about how you need to fit tools to what is necessary. So even at this point, because of the performance benefits .NET brings, it is still used at a lot of organizations at a heavy amount, which are achieving a heavy amount of scale, because .NET is battle tested. It is proven to be able to handle scale with relatively much more ease than a lot of other tools like Node.js or Python. So yes, .NET is still very relevant. And if you're looking for examples of organizations that use it, Microsoft, of course, is one. But aside from that, I do understand that recently it's also become more of a priority at AWS. They are supporting the .NET ecosystem a lot as well. It is still used at quite a few banks. Like I have in the past seen recruiting postings from places like Deutsche Bank for .NET. Siemens Healthineers actually use .NET a lot as well. At the moment, Tata 1mg is using .NET as well. So these are just some
Stack
examples.
Overflow is also using .NET.
They're the biggest example. I was just going to come there. Stack Overflow is the biggest example of what they can do with .NET, because they're handling millions of requests every day with a very small number of servers because of how capable .NET is. There are a lot of organizations working at an enterprise level at a large scale that are using .NET, and .NET is still very relevant. That's not changing at the moment. So it is a good stack to work with.
So a few things I am also willing to add here. When it is coming to the .NET, so .NET is not a thing it is going to go anywhere. .NET is from 2001 in the market, and Microsoft constantly evolving it. If you're looking at the current stack of the .NET, it is very, very good if you're comparing its competitor. Even Microsoft officially claiming the .NET 7 is 11x faster than Node.js. It is 3x faster than Java Servlet. Look at the performance numbers. What are the Microsoft is sharing about it? And
those benchmarks are actually public. So anyone can actually access those benchmarks. It isn't a hidden test that someone is just like, we've just put those numbers. Those tests are visible publicly.
Right. So if you will explore the .NET official website, these numbers are mentioned over there. So definitely, if you're looking at the Microsoft, the strategy right now, Microsoft is going to adopt many technologies. Even if you're looking at that recently ChatGPT acquired by the Microsoft, if you're looking at the GitHub, we having the LinkedIn. So these are all the Microsoft companies where Microsoft already testing the .NET well way over there. Already many companies that say Siemens, Stack Overflow, we having the many more who already running the .NET in the production, and they are able to handle the millions and billions of requests in that daily life they have.
Yes.
So now what is your career goal? Where you want to see your career after, let's say, 5 years and 10 years, if I'm asking today?
That's definitely a very good question. I think for now, I have fortunately very early found a niche where I'm able to make an impact in the way I want. Like I said earlier as well, the kind of impact that I want is I want to be able to contribute to the technologies, but also help people with it. And fortunately, Appride created an opportunity of that sort for me, where I am currently working as a developer advocate. So at the moment, my goals are to continue both growing as a technologist, as a developer, learning more, while also supporting communities, understanding how communities grow and scale, and supporting that for us. Because we are an open source product, we are up there on GitHub, and we are purely developer oriented. So my goal for now is to better work and better enable success for all of these developers. And that is something I see myself focusing on for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 4 or 5 years at the minimum. So I am focusing on doing that more for now.
So thank you, Aditya, for coming on the show. I hope the audience will get the help from the Aditya journey. He has shared so many insight from his career. Definitely that insight will help you to grow in your career, and that would be your learning as well. So thank you, Aditya, for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and just putting it out there in case any of the scholars want to connect with me. My LinkedIn is always open. It's always accessible. My only request is if someone reaches out, just mention in the message request that you've come across from here, and I'll definitely prioritize having a conversation from there. So yeah, that's just one last thing I wanted to put out.
Okay, thank you.